Hey, good afternoon. I don't know what time it is. You have these election nights and you're up till morning and weeks and whatever, and I'm all screwed up. But hey, welcome to another episode of the Doug Thompson podcast, the storytellers season of storytellers. I slept since yesterday, maybe a few minutes. Anyway, I've got a great guest with me. All my guests are great, but Mr. Steve Gamlin is joining me today. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Doug. Happy to be here.
Well, great. I'm happy to have you here. And the more that I read into your background and your story and stuff like that, the more I see that we were just simply out of phase from our ages, or we would have been parallel, what went on. So I'm glad to have you on and experience. You got better hair than I have, so I
Oh,
do have
thank
to
you.
do
Well,
that.
what's left of it? Yeah.
Well, as we go and all, it's just that a little sunscreen. I'm good. I
Yep.
can go. So
Yep.
let's say thanks.
Mine had a really good run, and it's okay.
Mine had a good run till I was in college. There's a lot of things in it. So you're a storyteller. You tell us a little bit about yourself, because you've got a long career, varied career of doing a bunch of different things all at the
Yeah.
same time. So you're a juggler, is what I would call it.
Yep. Yeah, it all started when I was 11 years old. I wanted to be a radio DJ because of Dr. Johnny Fever on WKRP in Cincinnati. I wanted to be an author of my own books. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian because Steve Martin was huge at the time. And I wanted to be a teacher of people, but not in the classroom. And I am going to turn 57 next
Mhm.
year. And I've managed to, with a little bit of overlap here and there, do all of these things. I enjoyed a 10-year radio career, worked
Mhm.
15 years worth of hours. I've published so far 4 books. I did stand-up comedy for 7 years, and I've been a speaker, teacher of people for just over 20.
That is a lot for an 11-year-old to envision what they wanted to do with life. So how did, and I'm a big WKRP fan. It's funny being back in the radio. I guess we'll start there.
Mhm.
Again, I was a morning sports guy for a local station. I did the play-by-play, or I did the color part play-by-play for a local high school football. But this is back in the day of reel-to-reel tapes, splicing things together, well before and really podcasters are the modern day radio people
Yep.
anymore. Just the technology is a lot better. But what did you talked about, your storytelling, and did the radio piece sort of start you in the journey of story, or realizing that you were going to be a storyteller?
In a weird, bounced off the wall way. I was on the radio for 10 years at 3 different radio stations. Every time one got sold, we all got fired and had to go look for another job.
Format
But
change.
oh my gosh, we're going to put a lot of money into the station, and then in parentheses you read it used to be your salary. So
Yeah.
booted out the door. I honestly didn't have the confidence in my voice. I did not have this voice at the time, but I was an off-air rock morning show producer. I was a very successful producer. I was also a comedy writer, so I would write a lot of the bits and song parodies.
Mhm.
So the storytelling for me wasn't necessarily my voice; it was what I could craft.
Mhm.
In being in radio, it's you got to hit them hard, hit them fast, leave them wanting more. So
Mhm.
that's where I really learned how to kind of create a story in a really short amount of time for maximum impact. So that
Mhm.
part of it, I'm actually glad that it happened the way it did. Because as I grew into my voice in the last 2 years of radio that I had to use my voice gladly,
Mhm.
and then as a speaker and as a stand-up comic, the structure that I learned of not being able to use my voice, but having to
Mhm.
craft stories, really, that was my forge, was the first 8 years of that. And that was solid gold of an experience. As tough as it was not having confidence and wishing I did,
Mhm.
I'm glad it happened that way.
Yeah, it's sort of funny because Stephen Pressfield in his book "No One Wants to Read Your Shit" talks about being an ad guy. They remember him for other, Bagger Vance and things like that, but he wrote that about when he was an ad guy, and you have to be really brief and short and punchy, like you just said. And because in radio you have a short attention span, even though people will listen to you for a long time on the road to work or something like that, they're just, because there's no visual to keep them, you're like a secondary thing that's going on. So it's easy to sort of tune out what went on. Because I know I wish I had rewind on my radio a lot of times when I was there, because I would miss part of a bit or something that went on. So I think that, and I think it happened at the right time because I did work with people that had a great voice, face for radio, as they used to say too, but
Yep.
which I have,
Me
but
too.
they were almost arrogant about it. And they were some of the hardest people to work with, and they were also the least genuine when they moved a lot simply because they would burn out their audience, as opposed to sort of developing a following or sort of a true following that went on.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. And people think, oh, radio, that must be fun. I'm like, between the songs, it sounds fun. But there were a lot of egos. There were a lot of
Yeah,
fights in the
yeah,
background. There was a lot of addiction. There's a lot of mental illness. There's a
yeah.
lot of that in that world. And I really, at that point, didn't want to be around it anymore.
Hmm. So that what evolved after that? What's the next part of your next chapter of your story after radio?
The couple of years after radio are called, Steve really should have put some more thought into this, because
I
in a
think we
real
all have those chapters.
in a real short window of time, without a
Yeah,
plan, and all
yeah,
I had was a weekend wedding DJ business making like 11.5 a year,
yeah.
I walked away from radio
Mhm,
cold. Just walked, gave my notice, and left without a plan. Shortly after that, went through a divorce and realized at age 35 that I was tens of thousands of dollars in debt
mhm,
because I was not paying attention
mhm.
without a full-time job.
Right.
And I just fell into the ashes, even moved back to my dad's house where we had just built, and I took out a $30,000 business line of credit
Mhm.
and built a recording studio in his basement with no revenue at all coming in, really.
Yeah.
And so that's the part that I refer to as, I really should have planned this better. But as it always happens, being who
Mhm.
I am, one of my stage stories is called Some Days Your Phoenix Rides a Pogo Stick. You just keep bouncing back. And you're going to fall back in the ashes because you're
Yeah.
going to do some more decisions that weren't very well thought out. But
Yeah.
what I've discovered since is, first off, you get the most amazing stories when you completely mess up your life.
Mhm.
And second, you can burn your tail feathers off, but they'll always grow back. And when they do, the colors are brighter and they're stronger, and you can fly higher if you make the right
That's a nice
decisions.
visual for that standpoint.
Yeah.
But trailblazers, because there are no rules and no guides for success at that point in time, that's the way that you learn. You're sort of creating, and everybody's, you got to create your own path with that, because there's no sort of template of here's how you do this in 5 easy steps. Anybody's telling you that, yeah, is lying. I mean, it worked for them. Maybe it was 5 easy, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
And you've got to find your own path. But there are some patterns and things that you can sort of take off those things that sort of help give you a little guidance, at least. Hey, yeah, the N on the compass is north. Maybe you want to go that direction or maybe not. But I think that's great. And then, so after that, when did you get into the comedy piece? Because that's another area of egos and confidence. I mean, it's, one day you're a hero, the other day you're bombing, and it's just hard to tell the difference.
Yeah. Actually, becoming a stand-up comedian and a professional speaker happened in the exact same moment,
Wow.
which is, I never could have scripted it. But on a Friday afternoon, super hot and humid in August of '03, I had $3 left in my pocket, and I went and decided to take out all my self-loathing and frustration on a bucket of golf balls. And because I'm the world's worst golfer, I went to the farthest tee box at this particular place because there's no way I could dent anybody's car in the parking lot from there. And I just started smacking golf balls, just getting out frustration. And I was
Mhm.
way at the edge of the property. So I was underneath these big steel towered power lines, and a thunderstorm came ripping through.
Oh, no.
And so I stood there. Everybody else ran from the storm. And I'm like, well, my life sucks. So I held the
Yeah.
club up and said, go ahead, I dare you. And
Yeah.
nothing happened. So I went back to hitting my bucket and the buckets of two guys who ran from the storm and never came back. So at the end of an hour, I couldn't even lift my arms.
Yeah.
I got back to my car and the rain stopped and the sun came out, and I just shook my head and I just started laughing. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
And the
It
next
is.
day I was on a call with a brand new life coach, and he asked, how was your week? And I told him, as funny as I could make it sound,
Yeah.
and really self-deprecating, I told him the story of that hour. And when he stopped laughing, he asked, have you ever thought of being a stand-up comedian or a motivational speaker? I think you'd be really good at both. And he did not know
Uh,
my 4 goals when I was 11 years old.
yeah.
That came out of the moment. 2 weeks later, my first comedy class. A week after that, my first Toastmasters meeting.
That's amazing. And Lee Trevino used to say even God can't hit a 1-iron, so he would hold it up when he came
Yep.
up from the golfing thing. So
Nice.
maybe were you holding up a 1-iron? Is that what it was? Because it's a
It
horrible thing to hit.
I don't even remember. I only owned one golf club, and it was a lefty. So I used to just walk around like Happy Gilmore with it in my belt loop, walking around. I didn't have a whole bag. I played a 9-hole course one time with 5 other people, all of whom had their golf bags, and they all, had the little socks with the pom poms, and I had
Yeah.
my Happy Gilmore, and I beat 3 of them.
I played golf with a guy that because I would argue about the worst golfer, but that's a whole thing for another episode.
Yep.
I played with this. I was like 20. When you're 20, it's all about distance. It's always about distance. And I got as a single, and I got paired up with this gentleman, probably my age now. But he had a 5-iron and he had a putter, and he shot like 5 over par. It was always like 150 yards, one putt. I was just like, and I'm going 150 yards into the woods on this side. I'm going 150 yards woods on that side.
Yeah.
And it showed you, it's just simply know what your skills and stuff are. He didn't play it safe, but he knew what worked for him.
Yeah.
And I did learn from that it's not about distance. It's about, a little bit bigger picture than that. And it sounds like as you went along your career, even you had these, as an 11-year-old, had this vision, didn't really have a sequence or anything, but knew what you wanted to do. You were doing things up to a point where you developed enough skills to say, okay, in whether either your 2 years of stepping away, wish you had a better plan or something. It happens at the right time, I think. And the thing that you had there, it was very appropriate for the meeting before your life coach, that you need people. I'm very bad at, I'm getting better about knowing what I do well. And I do things so often. I think we had a talk about this before, when we talked about the podcast, is that like storytelling, I just sort of developed this habit because it interested me and went on, and I do it so often that I don't think it's remarkable. I think that everybody does it this way. And it sounds like you were along sort of the same thing when you went to do the after the lightning round of golf, when you went to see your coach.
Yeah. And exactly what you just said, and even now people say, oh my gosh, I love the way you tell stories. I wish I could do that. I'm thinking, can everybody do that? I mean, we were all kids. We all had this creativity, and maybe some people got it stifled out of them, but it always worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter where I am now, I can be, in a grocery store, I can be in a room full of strangers, and I'll get in a conversation and start painting pictures with words because that's just how I do it.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to the point where in this dear friend, Debbie, who's a fellow speaker, she told me about 15 years ago, you have got to start charging people to help them with their stories and their humor. You have a gift. And it wasn't
somebody
until
having
about
to point out what you do well that you can do something with.
Yeah, it wasn't until about 6 years ago that I took on my first paid client to do that, and I fell in love with it immediately, and I've been doing it ever since. Matter of fact, I just got off a call with somebody who's referring me to some people to help them. But we don't see it because it's so effortless to us, and when it's effortless and comes easily, we don't always see the value, and I devalued myself for, well, let's see, I'm 56, so for about 50 years.
It is amazing in that, there's such gifted people that don't really know that they are. And they at a certain point in time, giving back, I love mentoring people, which is much the same thing. And the feeling I get back out of that, I mean, it seems to me, one of the things to me, and I don't know if you had this feeling or not, overcoming the guilt of charging something you like to do and then like to watch them to do, making money on that.
Yep.
That's a mindset thing that I had to work with. I was working with a leadership coach, and she says, you need, you're worth this to do that. And I said, but I'm making the world a better place. I'm doing those altruistic things. Yep. But at the end of the day, she pointed out that, yes, but if you did have funds to go do something, you could do things bigger and more people. So playing small doesn't really help the world as much as it could. You're like you're destined for bigger things than the 11-year-old trying to figure out because he likes Johnny Fever.
Yep. Yeah, and that was a huge lesson for me to learn as well, the value. And I found too that at first I would just charge people a little bit of money, and then somebody pulled me aside and said, "If you charge too little, people will think you're not valuable."
Right. And not
And,
value
and
the
I,
information you're sharing as much. Right.
exactly. And matter of fact, I just had a conversation with somebody who's also in the speaking world, and she was asking me what my fees are, and I told her the range, and she said that upper range needs to be your lower range, because this is the cutoff for the money where people will really take you seriously if you get above that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a conversation I now have to have with my agent, and we'll proceed from there. But
I'm sure your agent
something
will
very
reject
exciting.
all that higher money. No, no, no.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. She's on a percentage fee, and I love her to death. She's worth her weight in gold. She
Yeah.
really is. But it was more my mindset that was keeping me from doing that. But when somebody I respect, somebody who's advanced and is further up the mountain than I am in the industry I'm in, says that, then it really, I got to hop off the side of the trail for a second, sit on a rock in the sun, have a sandwich, and really think about it. And
Yeah.
I agreed with everything she said. And it's more just getting in our own mindset to say, look, I can help more people if I do this. And when people try to devalue it and say, well, you love to do it, you should do it for free. I said, look, I bake cookies and bread for homeless shelters for free. This is what I do for work.
Yeah.
And if I don't do this, I can't afford to do the baking and the acts of kindness with the nonprofit that my family and I started. So I got to do this.
It's a great way to frame that. That is it enables you to do, like then that's the leadership coaches tell me, it enables you to do more, right? Be more generous with the stuff that you have in other areas. And we're all put together. God creates a unique set of skills within all of us. They're all, even though you and I are wired a lot alike, we're still divergent some from background and stuff that goes on. And we're the only us there, which my wife a lot of times says, thank God there's only one you.
Hey, I thank God every day. And every time I hear thunder, I think back to that day golfing. And I go, man, he is still laughing.
Yeah, he's still, I got Steve that day.
Yeah.
So, and that's the story he'll tell later.
Oh yeah. He's got me in the headlock going, oh, you big knucklehead. Go ahead. I'll keep you around.
Yeah. And that's interesting. So I know you got like I tried to get on the picture, the woodshed or the wood pile guy. Was it wood?
Yeah.
Was it?
Oh, motivational firewood. Yeah.
Firewood. What's the sort of analogy there from that works with that?
Yeah, that actually started early on. I think I'd been a speaker for about a year, and somebody said, hey, Steve, are you aware that there's a chapter of the National Speakers Association that meets in Boston as NSA New England?
Right.
So I drove down for a meeting. And of course, everybody who's a member has these like beautiful lanyards and these beautiful name tags and everything with stickers and stuff. And somebody points to a Sharpie and the hello, my name is for me as a visitor. So my name is Steve. And I stick it on. And this gentleman named Don was at the front desk, and he says, hey, Steve, so happy to have you here with us today. What do you speak on? I said, well, I'm a motivational speaker. He goes, all right, well, what makes you unique or sets you apart and makes you different and interesting? I said, well, I want to help people. He said, well, we all want to help people.
Yeah.
We want to have an impact. And God loved this guy. He had the patience of a saint.
Yeah.
About 3 to 5 minutes later of him continuously asking me and me just shoveling BS in his face.
Yeah.
I finally said, you know what, Don, if people are paying to hear me speak, it means they have a spark of something in their heart that they want to do or achieve or something, but they don't know how to do it. And if I share a story or a lesson or a tip or a tactic or a strategy that gets them to actually take action and create a result, I said, it's kind of like I gave him a piece of motivational firewood to add to that spark. And he went, that right there. He said, now that's interesting and unique. Yeah. So I quickly wrote it down, and he suggested that I get it trademarked, which I've owned the trademark on it ever since. And he said, now that's a really cool way to explain who you are and what you do and the impact you want to have for people. And it's stuck ever since.
We need a lot of, I had a mentor back, Mary Rodriguez, and she, when she first came, I said, here's what I want to do when I grow up. Again, think same. I wasn't 11. I was much older than that. But, and she kept drilling down. Well, why do you want to help others or serve others and do these other things? And she kept going. And she kept drilling down on it. And it wasn't until I was on a run one day that's where I used to clear my mind and stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, and it dawned on me the answer for that was, well, that's, we're all sort of put here. And if we all had the mindset of being a servant, not to get religious, but like, Jesus served the others. If we were
Mhm.
did that, the world would be a much better place. And that's really the ultimate motivation at the end of the day, is that servant attitude that I had to go ahead and be that servant to help other people.
Yeah.
And then she said, "That's it." And I said, "Well, couldn't you like give me a clue and a shortcut to get there?" You
But
know,
see, they can't
yeah.
give us the shortcut because we have
Yeah.
to keep digging through the layers. And I
Yeah.
had a similar thing. A good friend asked me why I became a speaker. I said, because I want to help people.
Mhm.
And he kept asking me. And 17 whys later, with tears coming out the corner of my
Uh-huh.
eyes, I remembered my why. When I was 24 and broke and depressed, living on my grandfather's couch,
Yeah.
my friend Danny had asked me why I never pursued my dream of radio.
Yeah.
And out of excuses, I borrowed $4,000 from my grandfather, went to
Yeah.
school in Boston, and got an internship in the fall of '92.
Mhm.
And I drove to my friend Danny's house because I hadn't seen him all summer.
Right.
And he asked where I'd been. I said, radio school. And I got an internship at a rock station we grew up listening to. And he was so happy and so proud.
Uh-huh.
And he passed away
Ooh.
3 weeks later. He had had
Yeah.
cancer twice. And this one, third time, it just came back and took him.
Yeah.
But all those years later, this is after radio and everything, when somebody asked me why I became a speaker, I said, I had a friend who believed in me when I didn't. So as
Mhm.
a speaker and as a coach, I want to be that friend for other people who don't believe in
Yeah, I
themselves.
like that. I like
And
that.
he
And
said, don't ever forget that.
it's sort of funny because I've got a 5-year-old granddaughter that lives with us, and she's at that stage where everything's why. She has those 57 whys, and somehow we lose that over time because they're
Yeah.
really curious. Not that they would ever, I don't think it necessarily sparks that 11-year-old vision that you had, but we forget about that curiosity of, well, getting down to, if you go to math, I'm normalizing this equation to the least, to the smallest thing, right? I'm getting down to what it does, and we just accept things as opposed to, well, why is that? We think that's the least common denominator,
Yeah.
and it's often not. And again, other people being better at seeing us than we are, and a lot of that has to do, I think, because we're around us, 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
Gets back down to that same thing. We just do what we do, and we don't think it's remarkable.
Yeah.
And Tara, our mutual friend there, has done that, sort of brought us a group together that we're here and we're finding this such great group of people that are on a similar mission. And how do we make each other better? It's all about how we make each other better. That because if we make each other better, then we should be better simply because we're for me, sometimes unconsciously, something will come back into my head that I've learned from these other things. So
Yeah.
it is a nice growth. You never outgrow learning.
Yeah.
I'm more of a learn it all than a know it all
Yeah.
attitude. But sometimes it's a bit distracting because I don't know if it's ADHD or I have this. If you back to Clifton Strengths, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but my
No.
top two, there's 35 unique strengths that are in a different order and strength in all of us. And mine is the top one is adaptability, which is great because in tech world things change all the time.
Yeah.
But the other one is information, which then it can put me off on this shiny object spool sometimes to drain the end of the internet, because as I'm developing a talk or something, I'll think that, okay, I've got, well, this is an interesting thing I could add to it. And I'll go drill down on that and I'll find 15 other, divergent things that go on.
Yeah.
What was I supposed to be doing here again? I forget.
Oh, me and my thundering herd of squirrels are
Yeah,
nodding in
exactly.
agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. My one of my big goals,
Mhm.
and I've actually gotten an extension called a Chrome extension called Facebook Newsfeed Eradicator,
Oh.
meaning you can't scroll Facebook on my lap. I got one, two,
Yeah.
three, 4 computers that I work on
Uh-huh.
here at home, and I have put that Facebook eradicator, eliminating the rabbit holes on
Yeah.
all 4 computers
Yeah.
on purpose, with
That
purpose.
Yeah, I need to have that. Well, a lot of it's now on the phone now. You pick it up and it's just, distraction that comes along with you. I try to
Yeah.
put it down certain hours of the day or not check it.
Yeah.
Because I have that. It's the focus thing. And I don't know. I like learning new things, but sometimes when I have to go do things, I have to have a deadline, or it's a little bit. There's a the guy, and I can't remember his name right now. Again, that's another problem I have. Is he came up with this behind me here? There's 4,000 weeks, or my life in weeks, and he had this sort of he had this thing. Wait, wait now, but why? Right. So don't wait, because we only have 4,000 weeks, and as I fill in the little circles there, you can see it sort of gone down. I got a lot less white space there. So
Mm.
focusing on what did I accomplish this week, and I was sort of helping keep the squirrels in check.
Yeah.
But so now that is the 11-year-old satisfied with your life yet?
The 11-year-old says, "You're going in the right direction. Just keep going and keep
Just
growing
keep
and keep
going.
showing up."
Yeah.
I mean, I'm super happy that I can say I've checked off all 4. Now, have
Mhm.
I done them all as effectively as I could?
Yeah.
Radio, sure, because I learned enough that helped me in the
Mhm.
next iteration of my
Right.
life.
Right.
So now it's, of course, we had that hiccup earlier this decade where when you own 2 event-based businesses and all of a sudden the world stops, that puts a little damper on some progress. It's
Yeah.
the time of my life I now refer to as 3 deaths close of people close to me,
Yeah.
2 years of black mold exposure wafting
Ooh.
through the vent above my office before we found out it was happening,
Oh.
and 1 pandemic. So
Yeah.
it was a hiccup,
Mhm.
but I also worked on my skills and dialed in a lot of things during those couple of years. So now that I'm getting back out there on live stages,
Mhm.
now that I've built this second recording studio at the house my wife and I own,
Mhm.
and everything I've created online and my digital programs and everything, having that downtime, it was more of a cocoon than an exile.
Mhm.
That's the way I see it now. And I think the 11-year-old is really happy with that I'm finding the good no matter what.
Mhm.
We just how we react and respond. I think that kid is happy that I'm still making a living wearing jeans and black t-shirts, which
Yeah.
was the goal in the first place.
Johnny Fever.
Johnny Fever, Black Death vodka t-shirts that he used to wear. I don't wear those. I've got my own that say "Got Vision."
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say the 11-year-old is still cheering me on and
Did
still
the
believes in me.
11-year-old have a vision board? That sort of brings us up to the last topic here that I was going to sort
Yeah.
of cut.
I didn't have a vision board because I didn't really know what the concept was at the time.
Yeah.
But long before that kid ever knew somebody named Jack Canfield existed, because one of
Mhm.
Jack's biggest lessons is acting as if.
Yeah.
Wanted to be a DJ. Well, my dad had this old cassette recorder, so I would get my record player and the cassette recorder. I'd hold the mic to the speakers. And
Uh-huh.
when the song stopped, I would talk during the groove. Those of you
Yeah.
young enough to not know what records are, ask your parents or grandparents. And I would be the DJ and I would just make up stuff and
Yeah.
sing little songs and actually create little comedy and talk
Mhm.
about the weather. So I was being it
Yeah.
before I even knew it could possibly be a career. I used to write my own little short stories.
Yeah.
I used to love to make people laugh. And I used to write little comedy bits and song parodies, even when I was a kid.
Mhm.
And I eventually got paid to do all of that. I've got the only award I think I've kept in my life was for a comedy bit that I wrote in 1997 that took first place of all radio stations
Mhm.
in the United States, Canada, Mexico, and England. A commercial parody bit that I wrote called Manger 6, based on the old Motel 6 commercial.
Yeah.
The
Wow.
11-year-old cheered his butt off when I won that.
If I go back, you're 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 still that 11-year-old, and you're doing this stuff that you like. You're just doing it at a different scale, and now it has a name. But in describing what you did, there's a cycle that keeps repeating that you started from then, and it's just simply gotten bigger as you've gotten better at it. That's
Yeah.
not that probably somebody else has probably told you that, but that's what I see in the story that repeats. It's just different chapters at different stages in your life.
Yeah, and the fire is still there for all of it, but like you
Hmm.
said, the tools have gotten better. I
Hmm.
mean, I remember gosh, my record player and my dual deck cassette, holding the record button on one and hitting play on
Yeah.
another, and trying to cobble it all together. I'm just amazed that it was able to work as primitive as it was. I was so
I had an
excited every time it
8-track.
sounded good.
I had an 8-track that I had to record on. Now, you talk about mad skills to try to record on an 8-track cartridge.
Yeah. But we did what we did,
You
and
did
now
what
we
you
got
did.
these stories saying, boy, I'm so glad that even when the technology wasn't there, even when I was just cobbling something together, there was magic about it. And I still feel that way. Boy, when I get that one thing to go perfectly on the beat. Like just the other day, I was talking about the day I learned a lesson about how just because we're in a rush, the world doesn't necessarily rush with us.
Yeah.
How I ran into the bottom panel of my dad's garage door because I was trying to run and the door opened at its regular speed.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking about the thump of the door, and I hit my hand into my fist. And when I got the door hit to be exactly on that moment, I smiled like that 11-year-old kid did. Simple
And then
pleasures.
did it have the little imprint of your face on the door when you?
It probably did, because I was going full tilt and I had my head down because I was holding my laptop, my
Yeah.
briefcase, and a bunch of paperwork, and I was flat out on the garage floor
I've
looking
got
up.
a scar in my forehead where I forgot, like 5 or 6, where I tried to run through a screen door head first.
Ouch.
So again, we're mirroring each other just like a decade or so apart.
Yeah. Somewhere in the wood pile,
Yeah.
we're cosmically connected here.
That is fantastic, and I'm sorry it took this long to connect, but I'm glad that we did. So what you got going on now, and how can people get a hold of you?
What I'm doing now, we're actually moving all my digital programs over to a brand new platform and a couple of new websites, and trying to help as many people as we can, especially now at the waning moments of this year at the time of this broadcast, in the new year, to really get in touch with not just what they want to get, but who they want to become. So that's a big focus of all the coaching and programs I'm doing right now, is dialing it all back in and tapping back into the hope and the wonder of my 11-year-old self. It doesn't take much to do that, but to help other people find that in themselves.
That's great. And website, what's the best
Website, if you go to visionboardexpert.com, you can find everything I've got going on.
Or connect with him on LinkedIn, like I do. You can do off that. It's really great. So Steve, it's like a flashback of my life a little bit, except the younger me is being you is now teaching the older me some tricks and all that. So I do appreciate that. The 12-year-old, my wife constantly asks, I'll make some comments. She says, "How old are you?" I said 12. I still have the 12-year-old mindset to go on, and because those things are still funny, and I try to keep that, and it keeps me younger, and as much like you are, and your 11-year-old. Just fantastic stories. Thanks for doing that. Reach out to Steve. Thanks everybody for watching and all that, and we'll come up with another storyteller next time. But it's gonna be hard to follow the woodchuck. No, though. the firewood.
There you go.
Yeah. So there's a 12-year-old throwing in the woodchuck joke. So thanks everybody for listening. Bye.